First contact's price. Captain Elena Santos stood at the observation deck of New Terra Colony's supposedly civilian administrative center, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple. The massive transparent dome that protected the colony from the harsh atmosphere of HD 789,234 bits offered a perfect view of the three moons rising on the horizon. To any outside observer, she appeared to be nothing more than another colonial administrator ending her day with a peaceful moment of contemplation. The reality couldn't have been more different. Status report, she subvocalized, her neural implant carrying her words to the colony's true command center, buried 2 kilometers beneath the surface. Vraxian battle fleet detected at the edge of the system. Captain, Lieutenant Chen's voice echoed in her mind. Counting 37 capital ships and approximately 200 support vessels. They're maintaining radio silence, but their formation matches known invasion patterns. Elena allowed herself a small smile. The Vraxians, like so many species before them, had fallen for humanity's greatest deception, the appearance of vulnerability. When humanity had first ventured into the stars 50 years ago, they'd made a deliberate choice. Instead of displaying their military might, they had presented themselves as peaceful colonists, traders, and diplomats. Their ships were small, their weapons primitive, and their colonies seemingly defenseless. It was, as Admiral Jackson had called it, the long game. Deploy Ghost Protocol, Elena commanded. Throughout the colony, hidden systems began to power up. Beneath the agricultural domes, missile silos disguised as irrigation systems prepared for launch. In the mining tunnels that honeycombed the planet, squadrons of fighters powered up their stealth systems. The Vraxians had chosen New Terra as their first target, believing it to be the most vulnerable of humanity's outer colonies. Their intelligence suggested it was nothing more than a farming world with minimal defenses. They couldn't have been more wrong. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected, Chen reported. They're launching their attack force. Elena watched as the first wave of Vraxian dropships entered the atmosphere, their hulls glowing red-hot from the entry. They were beautiful ships, she had to admit, all sweeping lines and gleaming metal, proudly displaying the imperial crest of the Vraxian Empire. Let them land, she ordered. Full containment protocol. I want their entire invasion force committed before we spring the trap. For the next hour, Elena observed as the Vraxians methodically deployed their forces. Ground troops secured the spaceport, support units established their command posts, and engineering teams began setting up their equipment. Their confidence was obvious in every movement. Why wouldn't it be? Their scans showed no military presence, no defensive installations, not even basic orbital defenses. Enemy forces are fully committed, Chen announced. 85% of their ground troops have deployed. Their capital ships have moved into standard occupation formation. Elena straightened her uniform, not the civilian administrator's garb she'd been wearing, but the crisp black and silver of the United Earth Defense Force. Initiative authorized. Wake up Project Avalon. Throughout the colony, the transformation began. Farmlands split apart to reveal hidden hangars. Civilian buildings shifted and reformed into defensive positions. And from deep underground, humanity's true fleet began to rise. The first indication the Vraxians had that something was wrong came when their supposedly secured command post lost contact with their fleet. Then their ground troops began reporting that their positions were being surrounded by forces that seemed to materialize from thin air. Finally, their sensors detected multiple launches from locations that had appeared completely empty moments before. Elena watched as confusion turned to panic in the Vraxian ranks. The helpless colony had suddenly transformed into a fortress, and their carefully planned invasion had become a trap. Open a channel to the Vraxian command, she ordered. The communications officer quickly complied. This is Captain Elena Santos of the United Earth Defense Force to Vraxian invasion fleet. You have violated human space and attacked a sovereign human world. You have precisely 1 standard hour to surrender your forces. After that, we will respond with full military force. The response was immediate and predictable. Threats, demands for explanation, claims of impossible deception. Elena let them rant. "You don't understand," she finally interrupted. "This isn't just about New Terra. While you were focused on us, similar scenes have been playing out across human space. Every colony you targeted. They're all like this. Every single one." She paused to let that sink in. "You see, we learned long ago that the best defense isn't a show of force. It's making your enemies underestimate you until it's too late. You thought you were invading helpless farming colonies. Instead, you've walked into the largest military trap in galactic history." As if to emphasize her point, the first wave of human warships broke through the cloud cover. Sleek, deadly vessels that had been hidden beneath the surface of New Terra for years, waiting for this moment. Above, the orbital defense grid shimmered into visibility, its stealth systems powering down to reveal thousands of weapon emplacements. "The choice is yours," Elena concluded. "Surrender now, or learn exactly why humanity chose to hide its strength rather than display it. We await your response." As she ended the transmission, Elena reflected on the irony of the situation. The Vraxians had come expecting to find peaceful farmers, and instead discovered that humanity had transformed their entire colonial network into one massive military installation, hidden in plain sight. The long game was finally paying off, and the galaxy was about to learn a valuable lesson about judging by appearances. Ghost Fleet Rising. Admiral Kral of the Vraxian Empire had never experienced fear quite like this. His invasion fleet, once proud and imposing, now hung motionless in space, surrounded by weapons platforms and warships that had simply appeared from nowhere. The tactical display before him showed similar situations unfolding across human space, each of their carefully planned invasion forces caught in identical traps. "Impossible," he whispered, watching as another sensor update revealed yet more human military assets emerging from their hiding places. Their technological level, the readings we're getting. None of this matches our intelligence reports. His tactical officer, Commander Vex, pulled up a detailed scan of one of the human vessels. "Sir, these ships, they're not just advanced, they're beyond anything in our database. The energy signatures suggest they've mastered zero-point energy generation. Their hull composition, it's some kind of metamaterial we've never encountered before." The human ships were unlike anything the Vraxians had ever seen. Where Vraxian vessels were angular and imposing, built to project power and intimidate, these ships were sleek and predatory. Their dark hulls seemed to drink in light, making them difficult to focus on even when they weren't actively cloaked. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern-faced human male in a black uniform adorned with silver insignia. "This is Admiral James Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. I trust by now you've realized your situation." Kral drew himself up to his full height. "This deception was necessary," Chen interrupted. "You see, Admiral Kral, humanity learned a harsh lesson during our own history. The strong are always challenged, always forced to fight. But the seemingly weak, they're underestimated, ignored, or at worst, seen as easy targets." The human admiral's expression hardened. "So we chose to appear weak while building our strength. Every trade deal we signed funded our military research. Every cultural exchange taught us about potential adversaries. Every seemingly primitive colony we established was designed from the ground up to be a fortress." On Krell's tactical display, more human ships were appearing. Not just warships now, but massive vessels that his sensors identified as carrier groups, mobile repair facilities, and fleet support ships. An entire military infrastructure that had somehow remained hidden until this moment. "Your stealth technology," Krell began. "It's not possible to hide such a large force." "Not with any technology you know of," Chen agreed. "But then, we've had 50 years to perfect our deceptions. Those primitive fusion cores we use in our civilian ships. Perfect cover for developing zero-point energy. Our basic materials technology. a front for researching metamaterials and quantum-engineered alloys. Even our outdated computer systems masked quantum computing networks that your sensors couldn't detect. A new alert caught Krell's attention. His tactical officer's voice shook slightly as he reported, "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the human colony worlds. They're transforming." On the display, Krell watched in stunned silence as the seemingly modest human colonies underwent incredible changes. Entire sections of planetary surface shifted, revealing massive underground complexes. Orbital installations that had appeared to be simple communication relays or trading posts reconfigured themselves into battle stations. "Your people weren't the first to consider attacking us," Chen continued, "but we ensured you'd be the last. Project Ghost Fleet wasn't just about building hidden forces, it was about creating an entirely new form of warfare. Every human world is a fortress. Every civilian ship can be converted for military use. Every piece of infrastructure serves multiple purposes." The human admiral's voice took on an almost sympathetic tone. "We didn't want war, Admiral Krell. We would have been content to maintain our deception indefinitely, trading and cooperating with the galaxy at large. But you forced our hand." Krell's bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to find some weakness, some way out of the trap they found themselves in. But it was useless. The humans had planned for everything. "Your ship's computers are currently receiving a detailed analysis of your tactical situation," Chen said. "I suggest you review it carefully. You have 45 minutes remaining to surrender before we begin active combat operations. Choose wisely." As the transmission ended, Krell sank into his command chair. The tactical analysis was brutally clear. His forces were completely outmatched, not just in numbers and position, but in fundamental technology. The humans hadn't just hidden their strength, they'd leaped ahead of the galactic community in nearly every field of military science. "Orders, Admiral," Commander Vex asked quietly. Krell stared at the tactical display, watching as more and more human ships decloaked. Their fleet wasn't just large, it was massive, a force that must have taken decades to build in secret. And these were just the ships around one colony world. "Send the surrender signal," he ordered, his voice heavy with resignation, "and prepare a full report for the Imperial Council. They need to understand what we've awakened." As his crew carried out his orders, Krell couldn't help but admire the elegance of the human strategy. They had turned their entire civilization into a weapon, hidden beneath a carefully crafted illusion of weakness. The galaxy had dismissed them as primitive newcomers, and in doing so, had given them all the time they needed to prepare for this moment. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The Ghost Fleet had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same. The counterattack. The Vraxian Imperial Palace was in chaos. Emergency alerts flashed across every display as reports flooded in from across human space. In the Grand Strategic Command Center, Emperor Vaxthor watched with growing horror as the situation unfolded. "All invasion forces captured," he repeated, his crystalline exoskeleton dulling with stress. "How is this possible?" High General Zix, commander of all Imperial forces, manipulated the holographic display with trembling appendages. "The humans, they're not just defending, Your Majesty, they're advancing." The strategic display told a terrifying story. From each human world, massive fleet groups were emerging. But they weren't just protecting their territories. They were launching precise, coordinated strikes against key Vraxian military installations. "Show me," the Emperor commanded. A new hologram sprang to life, showing footage from their frontier base in the Nexus sector. The base's sensors detected nothing until suddenly, space itself seemed to ripple. A human fleet materialized less than 10,000 kilometers from the station, far too close for effective defense. But it wasn't their sudden appearance that caused gasps among the Imperial staff. The human ships moved like nothing they'd ever seen. They didn't just fly. They flowed through space, Their movements so precise and coordinated they seemed to predict rather than react to Vraxian defensive fire. Their weapons were equally shocking, not the crude plasma weapons they'd displayed in their civilian ships, but exotic particle beams and gravitational weapons that simply ignored traditional shields. This footage is from 6 minutes ago, Zix reported. The base fell 2 minutes later. No survivors. The Emperor's personal advisor, Scholar Prime Vena, stepped forward. Your Majesty, we're detecting a pattern in their attacks. They're not striking at random. Every target is. Is what? Vaxthor demanded. Every target is a facility or installation we used to gather intelligence on them over the past 50 years. They're not just counterattacking. They're systematically eliminating every location that helped us plan our invasion. In the silence that followed, a junior communications officer suddenly called out, Your Majesty, priority transmission from the human command. They're broadcasting on our secure Imperial frequency. Impossible, Zix breathed. Those codes are quantum encrypted. The main screen activated, showing Admiral Chen again, but this time he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a human woman in a different uniform, black with gold trim rather than silver. Emperor Vaxthor, she began, I am Director Sarah Zhang of Earth Intelligence. I believe it's time we had a frank discussion about the past 50 years. The Emperor's crystalline form pulsed with anger. You dare. We dare because we've been reading your secure communications since before you knew we existed. Zhang interrupted. Every spy you sent, every probe, every surveillance operation, we didn't just detect them. We fed them exactly what we wanted you to see. She gestured, and the holographic space between them filled with data, surveillance logs, communication transcripts, classified Imperial documents. Your entire assessment of human capabilities was based on what we wanted you to think. Even your code breakers who thought they'd cracked our primitive encryption were actually accessing channels we created specifically for them. Admiral Chen spoke next. As we speak, human forces are dismantling your intelligence network, not destroying it. We've had 50 years to study it after all. We're simply assuming control of it. The tactical displays around the Imperial Command Center continued to update, showing human fleet movements with terrifying precision. They weren't just attacking. They were executing a carefully choreographed plan that seemed to anticipate every Vraxian response. Here's what happens next, Director Zhang continued. In approximately 3 hours, your entire early warning network will go offline. 2 hours after that, your automated defense grid will receive contradictory commands and shut down for safety protocols. By this time tomorrow, every major military installation in your empire will be under human control or destroyed. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Unless, of course, you'd like to discuss terms. Emperor Vaxthor's voice shook with rage. Terms. You invade our space, threaten our sovereignty. No, Chen interrupted. We're responding to your invasion with a carefully measured demonstration of force. If we wanted to invade, your capital world would already be under our control. After all, he smiled slightly, we built most of its defense systems. That revelation sent shockwaves through the command center. Scholar Prime Vena quickly consulted her data tablet, crystalline limbs moving frantically. The upgrade contracts, the civilian infrastructure projects, all Trojans, Zhang confirmed. Every piece of technology we traded, every system we helped you upgrade, all designed to be turned against you if necessary. We learned from Earth's history that the best way to ensure peace is to make war unthinkable. On the tactical displays, more human fleets were appearing. Not just warships now, but massive engineering vessels, mobile repair platforms, and ships of configurations the Vraxians had never seen before. You have 1 hour to begin surrender negotiations, Chen stated. After that, we move to Phase 2 of our response. I don't think you want to see Phase 2. As the transmission ended, Emperor Vaxthor turned to his advisors. Options. High General Zix's crystalline form had dulled to an almost gray color. Fight, and watch our empire crumble as every system we thought we controlled turns against us. Or surrender, and hope the humans are as civilized as they've pretended to be. The Emperor stared at the tactical display, watching as another Vraxian battle group surrendered to human forces. 50 years of deception, of carefully planned manipulation, all leading to this moment. They had thought themselves the hunters, only to discover they were the prey all along. "Send the surrender signal," he ordered quietly, "and may the first egg forgive us for our arrogance." Empire's twilight. The Imperial Senate of the Vraxian Empire had never been so quiet. The normally bustling chamber, with its soaring crystalline arches and hovering platforms for each Senate member, was filled with a tense silence as they watched the human diplomatic shuttle dock at the capital's main spaceport. Senator Kexery, her iridescent exoskeleton dimmed with worry, turned to her colleague. "Did you see the latest analysis of their technology?" Senator Vrel nodded slowly, his own crystalline form pulsing with anxiety. "Impossible to believe we never saw it. Their primitive fusion drives were masking antimatter reactors. Their basic neural interfaces were quantum AI systems. Even their children's entertainment networks were running military-grade encryption." The Senate chamber's main display activated, showing the human delegation's arrival. They walked with quiet confidence through the grand halls of the Imperial Palace. No weapons visible, no powered armor, just simple black uniforms with different colored trim denoting their roles. They didn't need shows of force anymore. The entire galaxy had seen what humanity could do. The human delegation entered the Senate chamber, led by a distinguished-looking woman with silver hair. Ambassador Catherine Chen, sister to the admiral who had orchestrated humanity's military response. Behind her walked a team of human experts, scientists, military advisors, and cultural specialists. Honored members of the Imperial Senate, Ambassador Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "I bring greetings from Earth and the United Human Systems. We are here to discuss the future." Supreme Chancellor Vaxna, who had assumed emergency leadership after the Emperor's resignation, raised his upper limbs in the traditional gesture of peaceful discourse. "The Empire acknowledges humanity's superiority and awaits your terms." A subtle smile crossed the ambassador's face. "Superiority is not what we seek, Chancellor. If that were our goal, we would simply have conquered you. Instead, we aim for something far more challenging: genuine cooperation." Murmurs rippled through the Senate as holographic displays activated around the chamber. They showed images that made many senators' crystalline forms pulse with shock. Human ships helping repair damaged Vraxian installations, medical teams treating injured Vraxian soldiers, engineering crews working to restore compromised systems. "For 50 years, Chen continued, we studied your civilization. Not just your military capabilities or your technology, but your culture, your art, your dreams. We learned that despite our different origins, our species share many common values: the pursuit of knowledge, the desire for progress, the hope for a better future for our children." She gestured, and new images appeared. Detailed plans for joint scientific ventures, shared defense initiatives, cultural exchange programs. "What you see as our moment of triumph, we see as an opportunity for transformation. The Vraxian Empire has been a stabilizing force in this sector of the galaxy for millennia. We don't want to destroy that stability. We want to enhance it." Senator Kexery found her voice. "But your deception, the hidden fleets, the infiltration of our systems, were necessary precautions," Chen acknowledged. "Humanity's history taught us that true peace cannot be built on weakness. We needed to ensure that when this moment came, we could speak to you from a position of strength, not to dominate, but to ensure we would be heard." The ambassador's expression softened slightly. "Consider this: we could have used our capabilities to simply take what we wanted. Instead, we're here, offering partnership. Everything we developed in secret, The quantum computing systems, the zero-point energy technology, the advanced materials science, we're willing to share, not as tribute to conquerors, but as collaborative achievements between equals. Supreme Chancellor Vaxna's crystalline form shifted through various colors as he processed this. You would trust us with such technology, after we attempted to invade your worlds. Trust must begin somewhere, Chen replied. And we believe the best way to prevent future conflicts is to eliminate the technological disparities that lead to them. But more importantly, we understand something your empire has forgotten. True strength lies not in domination, but in cooperation. The chamber erupted in discussion as senators debated among themselves. The humans waited patiently, their calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the emotional displays around them. Finally, Chancellor Vaxna spoke again. Your offer is unexpected. The Empire has not had equals in 10,000 years. We have always been either superior or inferior to those we encounter. This concept of genuine partnership is challenging. Ambassador Chen smiled. Change always is. But consider this. Humanity went from horse-drawn carriages to quantum ships in less than 5 centuries. We achieved this not through conquest, but through cooperation, innovation, and an unflagging determination to improve. Imagine what our species could achieve together. She paused, letting her words sink in. The choice before you isn't between submission and resistance. It's between clinging to old patterns of dominance and subordination, or embracing a new model of galactic civilization, one where different species work together as equals, each contributing their unique strengths to the greater whole. Around the chamber, senators were beginning to show signs of acceptance. The colors of their crystalline forms shifted from the dull hues of fear and uncertainty to the brighter shades of hope and possibility. The age of empires is ending, Chen concluded, but that doesn't mean the end of your civilization. It means its evolution into something greater. The question is, are you ready to take that step with us? Peace through strength. 5 years later, the observation deck of the Harmony Station offered a spectacular view of the joint human-Vraxian fleet exercises. Director Sarah Jong watched as ships from both species maneuvered in perfect synchronization, their combined formations creating patterns that would have been impossible for either fleet alone. Quite a sight, isn't it? Admiral James Chen said, joining her at the window. Hard to believe that 5 years ago, we were revealing our true capabilities to a shocked galaxy. Sarah nodded, her reflection ghosting against the transparent aluminum viewport. The Galactic Council meeting starts in an hour. Are you ready for the announcement? As ready as we'll ever be, James replied, watching as a human cruiser executed a perfectly coordinated maneuver with its Vraxian counterpart. How are our friends handling it? See for yourself. Sarah gestured to approaching footsteps. High Chancellor Vexthor, the newly elected leader of the transformed Vraxian Federation, approached them. His crystalline form glowed with the deep blue hues of confidence and purpose, a far cry from the fearful patterns displayed by his predecessors 5 years ago. My friends, he greeted them in perfect English, one of many changes that had come with the new era of cooperation. The latest quantum communications from our border patrols just arrived. The harvester swarms have changed course. James smiled. As expected. They may be a hive mind, but they can still recognize when the odds aren't in their favor. The harvesters had been the latest threat to test the new human-Vraxian alliance. A nomadic species that consumed entire worlds for resources, they had begun probing the borders of known space 6 months ago. In the past, such an incursion would have led to a devastating war. Instead, they had encountered something unprecedented, a unified response from multiple species, led by the combined might of human ingenuity and Vraxian military tradition. The message was clear. The era of easy conquest was over. The other council members are particularly interested in our joint defense initiative, Vexthor noted, his crystalline form shifting to display patterns of subtle amusement. Amazing how quickly attitudes change when faced with practical demonstrations of success. Sarah moved to a holographic display, bringing up statistics from the past 5 years. The numbers told a compelling story. Trade volumes up 300%, scientific breakthroughs accelerating at an unprecedented rate, and perhaps most importantly, incidents of interspecies conflict down by 87%. It's not just the military technology, she said. It's everything else we've achieved together. The quantum communication network, the shared scientific databases, the cultural exchange programs. We've created something entirely new. Speaking of new, James added, how are the first joint species crews performing? Vexthor's form pulsed with pride. The human Vraxian crews are exceeding all expectations. It turns out our species complement each other remarkably well. Human intuition combined with Vraxian precision. The results are extraordinary. A soft chime indicated the approaching council session. The three made their way to the station's Grand Assembly Hall, where representatives from 24 spacefaring species waited. The hall itself was a testament to the new order. Designed by human architects, built with Vraxian crystal tech, and incorporating elements from various member species. As they entered, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Humanity's long game. The careful hiding of their true capabilities, the patient accumulation of knowledge, the strategic revelation of their strength, had been aimed at this very outcome. Not domination, but partnership. Not fear, but respect. Ambassador Chen was already at the podium, preparing to present the initiative that would transform galactic society even further. The Joint Species Development Accord would open human and Vraxian technology to all member species under a framework of mutual security and advancement. Ready to change the galaxy again? James asked quietly. Sarah smiled. That's what we do best. Only this time, we're doing it openly. As the session began, she watched the assembled representatives. Some were former enemies, others longtime neutral observers, all now bound together by the new reality humanity had helped create. The message they had sent 5 years ago still resonated. Strength didn't have to mean domination, and peace didn't have to mean weakness. In the space beyond the station's windows, the joint fleet continued its exercises, their movements a dance of power and precision. Human ships, no longer hiding their capabilities, flew proudly alongside their Vraxian counterparts. Other species vessels were beginning to join them, learning the new techniques and technologies that would help secure peace for all. The council is ready, an aide announced. Sarah exchanged looks with her human and Vraxian colleagues. Together, they had proven that the greatest power wasn't the ability to win wars, but the wisdom to prevent them. Humanity had hidden its strength not out of fear, but out of a deep understanding that true victory came not from defeating enemies, but from transforming them into allies. As they took their places for the session, the combined fleet outside formed a final pattern, a symbolic joining of different species' traditional formation styles into something new and powerful. It was more than a display of military precision. It was a promise of what the galaxy could become when ancient rivals learned to work together. The long game was over. The new game, one of cooperation, innovation, and shared progress, was just beginning.